This video, we're going to be beginning to discuss ionic bonding. So this ionic bonding is a type of bonding that helps atoms to stick together. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Before we do, we're going to have to recap something that we've already learned. So here you see in bold and underlined. I'm just going to get you to just pause for a second and read what that says. Okay, so very clearly, you cannot change the number of protons that an atom has. So an atom has a fixed number of protons. We know what that number is by looking at the atomic number. So say, for example, neon has an atomic number of 10. That means it's got 10 protons, and that can never change by any chemical process. But what you can do is change the number of electrons that are in the shells around the nucleus. And we do this by doing chemical reactions. So the number of electrons in the shells or the energy levels, this can change. But if an atom loses or gains electrons, then the number of protons and electrons will no longer be the same. So what we're going to be looking at here is how do we turn atoms into ions? So let's start by looking at an element. Let's say we have the element lithium. Lithium has an atomic number of 3. And what this means is that it's got 3 protons in the nucleus. So it's got 3 positive protons, and it's got a mass number of 7, which means it's got 4 neutrons also in the nucleus with no charge. If we were to draw the electrons, then we would say a lithium atom has 2 electrons in the first shell, and it has 1 electron in the second shell. So that's not new for us. We've done this before. But what we're interested in here is looking at the charges. If we balance up and check how many protons we have, I'm going to use an orange color here to show this. Well, we've got 1 proton, 2 protons, 3 protons. So we've got 3 positive 1 charges. If we add them up, then we have a total positive charge of 3 for this particular atom. What we also need to do then is check the electrons. And I'm going to use this red color to show the electrons. Well, what do we know about the electrons? We've got 2 electrons in the first shell and we've got 1 in the second shell for a total of 3 electrons. So we say that this atom here has a -3 charge from the electrons. Now, overall, hopefully you can see that these things are balanced. So if we think about the overall charge for a second, overall, we have 3 minus 3. We've got a +3 and a -3, and those things will add up to 0. So we say the overall charge of this thing is 0. So anytime we have an atom with an overall charge of 0, we simply call this thing an atom. We say that the charges are balanced. So here's a key word that we can talk about when we're talking about charges. We say that the charges are balanced. But what we did say is that the number of electrons can change. The protons will never change, but the number of electrons can. So let's look at a scenario where we've got a lithium atom. And again, there's still 3 protons and 4 neutrons, but let's say that the atom has lost an electron and now it only has 2 electrons. So one of them, the one in the outer shell, is gone. Well, again, we can track the protons and the electrons and we can count them up. We still have +1, +1, and +1 from the 3 protons for a total charge of +3. But what we've done now is we've created a situation where we've only now got 2 negative charges. So this is a -2. So to work out the total charge, we could now say that the charges are unbalanced. They're not equal to each other. So overall, they're not balanced. So we could say the total charge here, we can work it out by saying, okay, we've got +3 minus 2 to give us an overall charge of +1. Okay, so this here now is not an atom anymore because it's unbalanced in its charge. We now call this an ion. We've learned that before, that a charged atom is called an ion. And this one here happens to be a positive ion. And there's a special name for positive ions. You can make a note of this. We call positive ions cations. Okay, so cat means positive. Now there is a reason why it's called a cation, which we'll go into in another lesson. Cations are positive ions. Let's take the opposite scenario where we've got a lithium atom and we've got, instead of losing an electron, it has its normal 3 that it has, but it gains another one. Now, this is a very hypothetical situation. This is a metal atom, it's a lithium atom, and it will never gain an electron. It will always lose electrons. But hypothetically, let's just say it could gain an electron. What in this case, what we'll be looking at is we'll be counting the protons and electrons again, and straight away, again, we have 3 protons, because remembering that can never change, otherwise the element's going to change, and this is still lithium, so it has to have 3 protons. But in this scenario, what we've done is we've added an extra electron, and in this case, we have an extra negative charge. So again, if we count them up, we have a positive charge of +3, and now we have a negative charge of -4. So to work out the total charge again, work out the total charge or the overall charge. What we're going to do here is we're going to do, well, we've got +3 and take away 4 from that. Take away 4. And unfortunately, that's going to leave you with a -1 atom again. So again, this is an unbalanced. The charges we say are unbalanced. And anytime we have unbalanced, we don't call it an atom anymore. It's now an ion. What kind of an ion is it? It's a negative ion, negatively charged ion. And there is also a name on this, so no, negative ion. And there's a name on this, and the name is called an anion. Okay, so anions are negative ions. So basically, we worked out how atoms can turn into ions here. They turn into ions by losing or gaining electrons. Now, this is going to lead into the next lesson when we talk about, well, how does that cause things to stick together? All right, but for now, what I want you guys to do is, here's a little summary of this. Sorry, my screen has gone somewhere I don't want it to go. Here's a little summary of this. Here, you see these two sentences here that are underlined and highlighted in bold. That's something that's probably worth making a note of. So in our dictionary, what happens to create positive and negative ions? So I suggest that you might take that down. And then for practice, what we're doing is the rest of us, you'll see the homework was over here. These are the people who didn't miss class today. So what you guys are going to have to do is you're going to have to do all of them questions, please. So we're doing questions 68 down to 83 for practice. And you also are going to have a carousel quiz. If you're in my class, if you're watching this video and you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Just complete these questions for practice. But my class, we're going to go through the answers to these in class the next day. That's it, guys. You know how atoms turn into ions now. We'll be building on that the next day. We'll see you in class then.